Dane Tama here. There was an article that came out recently. It was an interview of a celebrity who has been in the spotlight as a recovery advocate, someone who struggles with substance use disorder. This person had a major, very public overdose. I think it was a couple of years ago now, 2018. Essentially, in the article, during the interview, I should say, I think there was an interview and there were several articles that spawned out of it. I read a couple of the articles. This individual talks about basically using marijuana and alcohol in moderation, and alludes to the idea that the reason that she used fentanyl and cocaine and some of these other drugs was because she was practicing what we call the abstinence model, and abstinence simply means that you're not partaking in something. And what we're talking about in this situation is people who are abstaining or not using drugs or alcohol, any mood or mind altering substances. And we wanted to hit it head on because this person has millions of followers, and a lot of people, when they see someone famous, they often think, well, they must know something, they must be knowledgeable, and their advice is valid. Well, we believe everybody has their own opinion, has a right to their own opinion. However, we want to caution everyone on, if you're someone in recovery, and it's working for you, or even if you're struggling in recovery, we want to caution you on the idea that it's safe to use what some people would refer to as lesser substances in moderation. I think Tommy and I both agree we don't really like to use like hard and soft drugs, terms like that, because it would imply that things like marijuana and alcohol can't ruin your life and they couldn't hurt you, which is completely untrue. We've seen it happen many times. But I mean, Tommy and I both in our journey tried to use in moderation with softer drugs. Tommy, you tried it. What happened?
So the first 6 times that I went to treatment, I came home thinking that I was going to be able to manage just smoking weed. Honestly, alcohol has never really been my thing. Heroin was my drug of choice, and I thought, there's no way I can be completely sober. That's not a thing for me. I'm too young to be completely sober. I'm too young to go the rest of my life without ever getting high again. So I always thought, I'm just gonna smoke weed and I'm gonna be okay. I started smoking weed when I was 12 years old, and I wasn't addicted to heroin until I was 18. So there was about 2 years where I was mainly just smoking weed, and I thought I could go back to just doing that. And I might make it a couple weeks, I might make it a month, I might make it 3 months, but pretty much that whole time, there's something in the back of my mind that's telling me, like, this is cool, smoking weed, you get high, it feels good, but I also know what it feels like to shoot heroin, and that's what my disease really wants me to do. Ultimately my disease wants to kill me, but it will settle for me getting high. Yep. And I would always wind up with a needle in my arm, sooner or later. And there's many different reasons that could happen. One, it could just be, the way that my body works, everyone says that there's no physical addiction to marijuana. Well, the way that my body works, there definitely is. If I'm smoking weed regularly and then I stop, I feel like crap physically. I'm cold and sweaty, and I can't sleep, I can't eat. And those are a lot of the things that I feel when I'm withdrawn from heroin also. Sure. So immediately my brain's like, what'll make you feel better? Heroin. If it's not that, I'm in a position, I'm buying some weed from somebody and they say, hey, I've got some pills also. Well, as we all know, those pills have fentanyl in them now. So that has taken me back. So there's, countless reasons why, for me, and most people that I know, and most people that I know that have tried that moderation method, it doesn't work for me. And I think it's absolutely a dangerous thought to put in people's heads, especially because I never gave sobriety and true recovery a chance until this time. And it's been 3 years now. And, if I had felt what actual recovery had to offer sooner, then, maybe I wouldn't have had to go to treatment 7 times. And I wouldn't have had to be homeless and overdose over and over and over again. And, So I think it's definitely a dangerous thought to put in people's heads.
Yeah, and there have been cases where I've seen people transition from using like heroin or meth to things like alcohol and weed somewhat or semi-responsibly. And the people say, what about those people? And my response is, good for them. If you can partake and you can do it in moderation and do it in a way that doesn't tear your life apart, then I'm happy for you. And I think that's great. We don't ever think that anyone shouldn't be using drugs or alcohol, or that everybody that does it is bad. I mean, by any means, we don't believe that we're closed-minded people. We simply subscribe to a certain form of recovery and sobriety that we have seen work well for us and many other people, and we also know there's other paths out there. What we're really trying to do is just caution people in being careful with introducing substances back into their lives that could potentially lead them to other things. Or, I've also seen people who, maybe they quit doing heroin, but they started drinking alcohol, and then alcohol slowly began to run their lives. What we know about addiction scientifically in the brain, a lot of times, the pleasure center in the brain is not working properly. We don't process dopamine and serotonin the way other people do. So when we dump something on it, like drugs or alcohol, we get a significant spike in dopamine, which is the chemical that makes us feel good. And, there's also a rebound effect to that. So you have that spike and then it drops very low. Oftentimes what people need is more of it to return to normal. And they may be depleted in the first place. Many times people are treating some underlying conditions, mental health related, depression, anxiety, could be bipolar, could be ADHD with their substance of choice. And if you're somebody who has achieved stability with your disorder through sobriety and through a doctor's care, like, maybe there's some medication from a doctor that's helping along with therapy. I caution people on pouring drugs and alcohol on top of that issue. It could take off a life of its own. For me and my story, many times that I stopped using heroin or meth or cocaine or crack or whatever it was that I was using at the time, and I thought that was the reason my life was going in a poor direction. What I found quickly was the drugs and alcohol were a symptom of what was going on underneath the surface, which was something in here that wasn't right, and something up here that wasn't firing the way I needed to fire. And every time I introduced a substance back into my body, it would throw my equilibrium off, if you would. So I often tried to be very careful with that, and many times I often was afraid that I was going to lose out on the good times. I quit doing heroin, but I'd say, well, that doesn't mean the rest of my life I can't go out and have a beer with my friends, or go drinking on the weekends. Especially, I got sober when I was 24 is when I really got my stuff together. But prior to that, age 19 through 24, I had quit heroin and crack many times, and started just drinking. But, I would often end up binge drinking. And then, like Tommy said, I would drink so much that I'd get a horrible hangover, or I would drink and my inhibitions would become lowered. And I'd say, okay, well, why don't we get a gram of cocaine? And then we do a gram of cocaine, and I want the party to keep going. And, before I know it, the sun comes up and I feel like garbage. And I'm like, well, I know it's going to make me feel better, which is a shot of heroin. But again, these things can happen very slowly, but anything that's going to pull us away from our life getting better is always a concern. So we just want to caution everybody on being careful with this moderate use model. If you're somebody and it works for you, then we're happy for you. But we also want everyone to be careful and keep a very serious eye on these things. And if something's working for you, like your sobriety and you're abstinent, why would you want to mess with that, And in the article she referenced that she felt because she was forced to be abstinent. Basically, in a lot of her movie roles, they had contracts written in, I think, that said that she wasn't allowed to drink alcohol or do drugs. And she was also involved, I think, in a 12-step program or something like that. She essentially blamed her sobriety for her using other drugs like crack and heroin and fentanyl, which I would caution anybody, it's not your sobriety's fault that you decided to use drugs and alcohol, okay? That's a choice we all make. We don't choose to be drug addicts and alcoholics, right? but recovery and relapse are both choices. So we just wanted to caution everybody and share a little bit of our experience. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Tommy, you have anything to add?
I mean, you just real quick, I know this has been a long video, but you brought up two really good points. You know, if I've got a depression or an anxiety disorder and I'm taking medication for that, but then I'm also drinking alcohol, smoking weed, whatever, it's not going to work. It messes up all the chemicals in your brain.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
Right.
The other thing that I forgot to mention, those times where I was smoking weed, I was doing it addictively. I would spend every dollar that I had on it. I would steal money from my family to buy more weed. Like it didn't matter what the substance was for me. I was going to abuse it. I was going to do it addictively, and it was going to run my life. So the moderation does not work for me.
Nope.
So I don't have anything else.
All right, guys. Well, as always, if you need something, have a question, shoot us a text, email, get in the inbox, whatever you got to do, comment, and we'll get back to you. Thanks, guys.
Yep.